Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and today I'm going to talk about sewing a slouchy white t-shirt. So the fabric I'm using is this white ribbed cotton tencel blend and I ordered this off of eBay. It worked out to about £10 a meter with shipping, which I thought was pretty good. You probably only need about a meter of it. And the pattern I'm using is a pattern I made up myself. So I'll quickly talk you through how I made it. So I started with a basic sloper. You can draft your own. I used the Bunka books to make one. And then after that, what I did was for the waist starts, what I did was I took in the waist starts at the side seam. So I eliminated the waist starts. And then I pivoted the bust start to the waist. And you can kind of see what I did here. So the bust start was pivoted to the waist, and then I spread it out a little bit to make it a bit more slouchy. So I kind of slashed and spread. And then I added length. This is about 20 centimeters here. Yeah, 20-ish centimeters here. So that was for the front piece. And then the back piece is pretty straightforward. So this is what the back looks like. This is what the back looks like. Yeah, so the back, I just eliminated the waist dart and the shoulder dart. I just kind of took it in at the side, take that away, and I just lengthened it out, kind of following the kind of shape of a waist. What I did was I used this side and copied the side seam along. And the the sleeve is just a straightforward basic sleeve. I raised the armhole from the slopers, and there's no kind of method to the madness. I just raised it up a little bit and then raised up the sleeve and just drew it so it looked nice, and then kind of walked it along to see if it fit. And I took away any kind of excess easing at the sleeve head. I don't really like that. And then I made two chest pockets, so it's just a standard rectangle. And the seam allowances I'm going to be using is 3/8 inch seam allowance all around except for the hem, which will be an inch. And I'm also going to add a little slit about 10-15 centimeters at the hem. So I'm going to get started now. So the first thing I need to do is cut out my pattern pieces. And since this is quite a large roll, what I usually do is I kind of lay out the pieces and then I kind of cut off the chunk that I want and off I go from there. And I'm using although this is kind of a white off-white, I'm using a beige thread because it kind of adds a nice look to it. So I'm going to get started with that. Okay, so I've cut out my fabric. I cut it on the countertop because it's a bit better for your back. And so I have so you cut it on the fold. So you have a front piece, and I keep the right side to the center, to the inside, so I don't get confused. Front piece, and I have a back piece. Again, I keep the right side on the inside so I don't get confused. My pockets and a sleeve. So some notes about cutting. I think my fabric was maybe 45 inches wide. What I did was I laid out how much I would need to cut out. So it was the length of my bodice and the length of the sleeve. And I cut that piece out and I folded over one side to do my front bodice and the sleeve. And then I fold over the other side for the back, and then I just cut out the pocket from the scraps. I'm going to insert a picture of my cutting layout. And then I use a little notch to mark where I want the slit to go on these sides. Okay, so the first thing I do is I do the pockets. So I get the right sides out, so they're like that. And then I fold in the hem allowance. So the way I do that is I just fold in a 3/8 of an inch all around, and then I pin pin it in place. And then what I'm going to do after that, after I do all the sides, is I'm going to do a nice edge stitch along the top of the pocket. And then I'm going to edge stitch the pocket to my front bodice piece. Really straightforward. I pin because I'm not one of those people who is able to hem without pinning first, but some people can, so if you can, go for it. I can't do it. And I use these nice pearl-headed pins because my hands are... Okay, so this is what it looks like when they're all pinned, the hems. So I'm just gonna do a nice edge stitch along the top of both of them, so the short end. And then I'm gonna pin it onto my bodice front a bit to keep it taut. So to position it onto my front piece, what I do is I grab my front bodice, open it up. Here, I'll move. So I open it up, hold it over me, so I kind of have an idea where everything is. And then I pick somewhere to put it on, so I kind of like it. Let me see. The two of them would be kind of like that, sort of. So anyway, so I just pick a spot to put it on, position it, just do one at the time, and then just match the position with the other side by folding it over and using some chalk or some pins to mark where the other pocket is, and copy that. So the next step after I trim all these threads is I'm going to sew the shoulder seams together. Some notes about sewing. I am using a ballpoint needle and a straight stitch for that. But when I do the shoulder seams, I'm going to do a straight stitch first and then a zigzag to kind of finish off the seam edge. Okay, so now that I have done my shoulder seams, I'm going to put in the sleeves. So one of my shoulder seams actually kind of puckered out a bit, which was really annoying, and the other one didn't. And what I did to handle the fabric better on a loose knit is you really have to like guide it through with your left hand, not pull, but kind of push it through, and that helps it from stretching out. So I do trim my seams generally as I go along. Okay, so it's time to set in my sleeves. I always get confused which is the front and the back of my sleeve. I have it labeled here, the front part and back part. Generally, I guess the front part usually has kind of a higher portion here, and that's because when you're standing this way, you can kind of see how your arm swings forward in this section, so it needs a little bit more room and it needs a little bit less that way. I'm sure I might be giving you a misinformation, but from my understanding, that's how it works. The only way I can ever tell is by looking at my pattern. So to set in my sleeves, I have both my sleeves right side up on my table, and then then I lift up my pattern, which is at the shoulder seam set like this, and then I lay it out over my sleeve. I kind of fold it in half and kind of notch the center point a bit, so I have some reference as to where things are going. Side seam, and then work my way up kind of before the easing really gets in, and then I do the back side seam, put in a pin, and then put in my second pin. And then I sort of match the notch with my shoulder seam. It's not that important exactly where it goes, to be kind of honest, on a stretchy t-shirt, but whatever works for you. Helps me kind of ease the sleeve in a little bit when I'm pinning it. So the way I drafted this pattern is I essentially had pretty much no ease in the sleeve head, which means that this sleeve is super easy to set. I just kind of need to follow along, and there's a bit of stretching at the top there. So I can see that that's not going to ease in very nicely with that center point, so I've, where that notch is, so I've moved it a little bit, just so it all kind of eases in nicely at the top. Just keep kind of stretching, pulling until everything is pinned in nicely. So it's kind of looks like, so it'll look like that with the pins in. And I do both sides, and then I sew it in 3/8 of an inch, and then zigzag along, secondly, and trim. Okay, so now that I've done the side seams, I clip just a little bit above where I've finished that seam. So you can see that the seam finishes about here, and then I clip. So the seam finishes here, and I kind of clip here. I've zigzagged a little bit less than straight stitch. That's so it can fold. That's so it can fold open nicely. So I just clip straight to that. And then when I fold it back, again, I pin it open like a nice little hem using my pearl-headed pins, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And then what I do is I start sewing a little like 1/4 inch hem, maybe from, or kind of like a 1/4 inch top stitch, I suppose, from the bottom. And when I get to the top, I pivot a little square and I come back around. So I'll show you what that's going to be like. So what I do is I sew from one end and I come along this way, pivot, sew across a little bit, and then sew back up like that. And that creates a nice little thing. So it's really important not to do the zigzag stitch all the way to the bottom here for this last sort of centimeter or so, or else this won't lie nice and flat. So if you're uncertain, just do a straight stitch for now, and then sew. You might be able to, so you can see that I've just kind of sewn and pivoted along the top. So it just looks like that. Okay, so now that I've finished my slit, I'm pretty much done the t-shirt. All that I need to do is hem the sleeves and the neckline and the bottom. So in order to do that, I just pin a 3/8 inch seam allowance along the neck edge. I kind of eyeball it. I wouldn't do anything larger than maybe a 3/8 inch because then it kind of gets bulky. Other ways you could finish it would be using like a binding, or I suppose a facing if you really felt like it. That's kind of a lot of work, but it does create a nice finish. And then for the sleeves, I do kind of a larger hem, so I do maybe about, maybe like a 5/8 inch hem, and then for the bottom I do a 1 inch hem, and then I press it and I'm done. Okay, so this is my t-shirt finished up. I'm pretty happy with it. You can see that this fabric drapes really well, and it looks kind of nice, half tucked in, and this is what the side slits kind of look like. So for me, this t-shirt's more just to wear with jeans, and that's it. So that probably took me about 1 hour and 40 minutes in total, from cutting and fussing around and pinning and everything.